Good afternoon, family. Thanks for checking out today's video. If you're new here, my name is Jonathan, and I created this channel as a way to record my progress as I work towards my goal of achieving a healthy weight. If you do enjoy my videos, make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. So close to that 500 mark, guys. I'd love to hit that 500 as soon as possible. Also, make sure that you click on that bell icon so you'll get alerted when I go live or post new videos. If you'd like to participate in on the live discussion, you can join me generally at 4 p.m. most weekdays or outside of my live streams. Consider joining our Discord. There is a link for that in the description below. Also, if you're interested in getting some ideas of the meals that we enjoy, we have created a Pinterest board that has some of our family's favorite whole food plant-based meals. Jackfruit watermelons checking in, waving hi. Hi, Jackfruit. I hope you're having a great day and everything is going wonderful for you. If anybody has any non-scale victories they'd like to share, I'd love to hear your non-scale victories. If you have any on-scale victories, I'd love those as well. How are you doing on your diet? If you've fallen off track, what are you doing to get back on track? If you haven't started yet, what hurdles are keeping you from getting started? And how are you making staying on your diet easier than the alternative? Today is weigh-in Wednesday, so I'm going to switch over to the scale. We're going to hop on the scale and see how we did this week. So 310.8. That is somewhat disappointing to have a 1 pound weight gain here. Let me update my system and we will talk about that a little bit. Let's see. All right. So, hey, Anthony, checking in. I hope everything's going great for you today, Anthony. I did have a 1 pound weight gain. That is unfortunate. I always like to see the scale go down, but I really can't attribute it to any particular thing for the past week. I was watching a video earlier where some people were talking about excuses, and the one of the people in the video mentioned that a lot of times excuses go hand in hand. Stop eating the cashews. Yes. I have cut way back on the cashews. I probably haven't had cashews for 3 or 4 days now. Carrie did buy a bag last week that was supposed to be only for cooking, and I busted into them for not cooking things. But she did use most of those cashews for a cashew sauce that we used for the noodles we had this weekend. But yes, those high calorie dense foods are seem to be getting to me now. But I was listening to this video. They were talking about excuses, and the one person talked about how a lot of times excuses go hand in hand with judgment. You usually come up with an excuse to avoid being judged about something you're doing, or when you feel like you're being judged, many times you come up with an excuse then to try to change their opinion of yourself. And I've been trying, like last week having that 2 pound gain, and then this week having another 1 pound gain. I've been trying to come up with an excuse, and I think I can't really come up with an excuse because I feel like I haven't done anything that could be judged as being negative. And so I don't, I guess my point is that I don't have an excuse and I don't really care to have one. It's just the way it is. I've done everything, in my opinion, as good as I could have done it. And it's just the way my body's responding right now. I am also been doing a challenge that there is a link down in the description below for a group called Foodways with Chef Dell, and they are they do 30-day challenges. Just kind of record your weight or do journaling for 30 days. And tomorrow is the 30-day mark. And when I started that challenge, I was over 317 pounds. So in the past 30 days, I've lost 7 pounds. And that to me is a huge victory because there's very, um, sorry, the phone started ringing here. Um, Losing 7 pounds in the last 30 days is awesome, you know. And when I look at things on a bigger scale than just the last week or, you know, the last 2 weeks, I'm down a good amount of weight. And so, again, like I said, I really don't have any excuse. I'm not going to come up with an excuse for gaining the pound. It's just the way it is. It could be a number of different things, but it just gives me, you know, a better, uh, I feel like everything else is going the right direction. I feel like my clothes are fitting better. I feel like my pants and my belt are looser and I can get around better. And just everything else in my life is going so much better right now than it was a year and a half ago, or really even 6 months ago. And I got to look at all those non-scale victories that I've been having and really be more focused on them than the others. Carrie says that it is a good practice in patience. Yes, I have done some videos recently where I have been preaching that patience that I so desperately need to figure out, because I do get frustrated when I have weight gains, but in the end, I know that this is about the 3 years. It's not about how I did in month 17 of my 3 year challenge. It's about how I did throughout the whole process. And realistically, in month 17 of my 3 year challenge, I've lost 7 pounds. And so that's a positive thing. You know, and it gives me hope for one of these next weigh-ins that coming up will be another 2 or 3 pound weight loss weigh-in, and then I can be all excited about that again. But like I've said before, celebrate the victories, forget the failures, and move on. And so I am going to move on from this, and we will switch over to the main page. So, yes, it is frustrating, but again, I have to remove that emotion from the scale. It's a tool. You don't get mad at your hammer for not hitting the nail right. It's not the hammer's fault. And the scale is the same way. It's not the scale's fault. And so I don't need to uh, worry about that too much, I guess. I hope everybody had a great evening. Since yesterday, food wise, it was pretty simple for me. I kind of knew that there was a chance I'd be up, so I didn't go crazy and eat a ton of food yesterday. I ended up having just some brown rice with this mustard dressing that Carrie's been making since we started the diet. And it was great. You know, it's so funny how something as stupid simple as a bowl of rice and some mustard dressing can be satisfying. And and so that's really all I had for dinner last night. We were kind of out of snack food. I'm sure when I get home tonight, Carrie picked up some groceries today. There's probably going to be a ton of snack food at home tonight. But uh I think I had a couple bananas, and I did eat a late night apple. I snuck an apple in at like 10:30 last night. I don't know why. I just felt hungry, and probably because I didn't eat a very big dinner like I normally do. And then this morning we had our regular oatmeal. Again, it was the spinach oatmeal, and I really enjoyed that. Carrie says that it was a big grocery shopping day. Yes. And so not having all of those snacks in the cupboards made it fairly easy to resist any type of temptation. Again, I knew that I was going to have a hard time losing weight this week, so I wasn't going to eat a lot last night either way. But one of the things I do have to say is that I didn't go into this weigh in fasted. I have done that a few times. And the last time I lost weight, I think that I was fasted for quite a while before going into that weigh in. And, you know, my body it might it might be that. I mean, it seems weird to think that something that happened 2 weeks ago could cause issues today, but it might have thrown some things out of whack or made my digestion change a little bit. Who knows? But anyways, food was real simple, nothing over the top, nothing new or special. I probably have a couple photos I can throw up real quick because I still have the camera going from the actually I did not take a picture of the rice last night, but I did take a picture of the oatmeal this morning. Lots of spinach in there, lots of oats, oat groats, and steel cut oats. So that was breakfast this morning. Um, and it's yeah, it was good. Food was good. I said it a few minutes ago during the weigh in there, but I've been feeling awesome. I really have been feeling like my mind is extremely clear. I and I'm extremely satisfied with how things are going in my life. And I've removed diet as being an emotional crutch. I've removed the food I'm eating from being an emotional crutch, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And that I don't look to my food to derive any pleasure from it or any discomfort from it. It is just the food I eat. I find that when it's I feel like it's similar to like people that are coffee drinkers. I had a relative of mine that we were doing this event where we were up early for a few days in a row, and they always complained that they couldn't get their day going without a cup of coffee, or that the reason why they were being a bee is because they didn't have coffee yet, and that their mood was dependent on whether or not they had coffee or if it was good coffee or anything like that. And I feel like we do a lot of that with food in general, not just something like coffee that we know has properties that cause withdrawals. But the salt, oil, and sugar, having that removed from my diet, I feel like has really benefited uh my mental state overall. Just because I enjoy the food. I like the food, and if Carrie puts up what we're having for dinner tonight, I'll get excited about what we're having for dinner. But even last night when I had something really simple like just brown rice with some dressing, I was just as satisfied eating that brown rice with dressing, last night than I would have been going to fast food or getting something like pizza out. Like, I get kind of annoyed when people talk, when I mention my diet, and the first thing I can see it in their minds, they just think about how bland and how boring it must be, and how joyless it is. And I just Carrie says sweet potato and rosemary casserole for dinner. See, that sounds amazing. Um and but people talk about, or just like I said, I can tell that they think that my diet is this awful boring thing, and it's because they can't grasp the concept of getting all of the taste from the food and not eating highly processed foods because they've done it differently their whole life. So they don't know any different. Sort of like the red pill with the matrix. If you're living in this other world, you don't even think about, a different world. So, um, and it gets frustrating because I was the same way. Like, I would have said the same thing. I would have thought the same way as the people I talk to think when I talk about my diet and I talk about the food that I eat. And they get this idea that it's boring, and that it like people so equate emotion and food together that they think that if your diet is boring, like they say my diet is, then my life is going to be boring. And that isn't the way it works. Just because you eat super high calorie foods that is creates these high dopamine responses that make gives you joy doesn't mean your life is joyous. I ate the most joyous foods out there going to these fast food restaurants or going to a steakhouse and ordering their expensive steak with their with their fries and going, getting the chili and getting added onions and added cheese to it. And those things people equate with being joyful and creating joy in your life. And they didn't create joy in my life. They created misery and they created pain. Like, I didn't realize it at the time, but when I was shoving the food in my mouth, it was creating these dopamine responses that made me feel amazing. And it was to counteract how shitty that stuff made me feel 2 hours later, or by putting weight on my ass and making it more difficult for me to go up a flight of steps or to tie my own shoes or to clip my toenails. I mean, that is got to be probably the one of the most ridiculous things, that I was almost completely unable to clip my own toenails because I was so overweight. Or if I did clip my nails, I was doing some sort of acrobatic or I don't know, the contortionist kind of thing, just to be able to get the clipper on my toenail and then not be able to even see what I was doing. Like, how awful is that? Or the number of times I broke a toilet seat because I was too fat and I sat on it wrong. Like, I was trading the joy of my diet in that food for the disappointment of all these other things in my life, the missing out on going to my kids' things and all of that. Like, I was trading all of those simple things that caused me pain or caused me discomfort so that I could have another double cheeseburger from a fast food restaurant. And now I've switched it around. I have taken that extra joy that I'm supposed to be getting from my food, or that extra pleasure I am supposed to be getting from it. And now I've traded that food pleasure for pleasure in my life, being able to bend over, get on the floor, wrestle with my kids, and not have to wrestle on my knees. Like, my kids, for all their lives, only wrestled me when I was on my knees, because I could only play around with them for so long if I was standing up on my feet. But if I was on my knees, I could crawl around and use my arms, and I could at least play for maybe an extra couple minutes. Now I'm on my feet. I can go out and I can do things with them. We can go on hikes. We can go on bike rides. These are all things that are giving me joy now because I've gotten the weight off and I've fixed my diet, that I don't need to rely on my plate to bring me joy. And maybe that's a little bit of a trap we get into, is that we start taking pleasure from our plate and what we eat, and then it starts slowing our bodies down or giving us discomfort or causing inflammation. And then we realize that it's more difficult to do these outdoor activities or these other things that are fun. So we just keep turning to the plate for our joy. And I've completely changed that. I still get pleasure from my food, but I don't have to have food to have joy in my life. I have to have health to have joy in my life. So um, that's kind of what I feel like, where I'm at with it right now. I'm at peace with my diet. I'm at peace with, and I know that even if eating too many cashews this past week is what caused me to gain a pound, I mean, big whoop. Like, if I was sitting here and saying, well, guys, I ended up having a cheat day. And so I went to fast food and got some French fries and all this other stuff, then that would be we'd be having a different conversation. But I probably overate a lot of brown rice. Probably could have eaten more vegetables. Me and Carrie talked about that a little bit today. She was looking at like a vegan food pyramid, and it really, the bottom of it is green leafy vegetables. And then above that is fruit. And then above that is rice and beans. And our diet probably has a lot more of the rice and beans than it does the green vegetables. Um, and so that is something that, maybe we can work on the balance of our diet and add more of those veggies in. But I also, again, I'm not going to worry about it too much. It's not something that is, uh, it's not causing me too much frustration, or I'm not worried about it too much. And one of the things I was going to talk about today was something that I've talked about a lot last week, or I've talked about in the past, and it's calorie absorption. I think that it's a big part of why what I'm doing has been working. And as I kind of think about it more, I realize that it is a huge part of why I gained the weight that I did gain. And one of the things that I don't think I really grasped very well prior to starting this or doing this research, and maybe I'm way off base because I haven't researched enough, but essentially is that I kind of always thought of our stomach as where we did all of the breaking down of our food and where our body kind of got our nutrients from. And I didn't really give much thought to what the small and large intestine and even the colon does in our digestive process. I was always just worried about getting food into my stomach. I was never worried about the process after that point. And now I'm realizing that that is actually the most important part of it, is after the food goes through your stomach, then your body starts using it and your body starts taking nutrients from it and starts digesting it. And I've talked a little bit about eating from scratch or eating food that's closer to as it was in nature. And what you find is that when you eat food, your stomach gauges your fullness. That's absolutely part of the process, but the stomach's job is to say, we have enough in our pouch here that we have work for our stomach intestines to do for the next few hours. And so then your stomach says, stop the feeding. We got to get to work on processing this food. And then that food goes into your small intestine. And that's where your body starts to pull the moisture out of it and starts to pull the nutrients out of the food as it's traveling through your intestinal tract. And what you find is that, or what they have found, is that our bodies don't break down like the cell walls of food very well once it's through the digestion. So your mouth chews it up and breaks up the cell walls, and then it goes into your stomach, mixes with your stomach acids, and then goes into your intestines. And when it gets into your intestines, there's nothing there that creates any more chewing, um and so you don't break it down much more after your mouth and into your stomach. And when you take foods that have thick walls, it really is difficult for your body to get those nutrients from them. And the best example that I can give is with kerneled corn. And Anthony, I don't know how did your air fried corn thing go? I'd love to hear about that now that I'm bringing up corn. Um, but when you eat corn, you see, sometimes when you go to the bathroom, you will see whole corn kernels in the toilet. And that means that your body didn't absorb any nutrients from most of that whole corn kernel, because it wasn't chewed enough in your mouth, or it didn't get a chance to break the cell wall at any point. So that passes through your system. And there's some times when that corn is what, because you only absorb what's touching the lining of your intestines, and sometimes that corn that is intact is touching the wall of your intestines, so your body doesn't actually get any nutrients from that corn, even though it's what's touching it. So it actually reduces the amount of calories that you are absorbing. Also, and that's just one example. Beans are the same way. If you took beans and didn't chew them, your body wouldn't get as many calories as if you take them and put them in a blender and whip them up. Anthony said that it was awesome. You just have to remove the husk before air frying. 5 minutes at 360 degrees Fahrenheit. It was good stuff. That's awesome. I'm glad that you liked it. Um, and so this whole idea of calorie absorption got me thinking about where I was getting calories from before I started this diet and the absorbing of the calories and the idea of what touches the stomach lining being what gets absorbed. And I got thinking about um, there's an experiment or a demonstration that you see. I don't know. I've seen lots of times on the internet, but it's essentially they take a glass jar and it's an empty glass jar, and then they fill it with large rocks up to the top of the jar. And when you look at the jar, if somebody said, "Is this jar full?" you would say, "Yeah, that jar is full." But then they take some smaller rocks or pebbles and they put it inside that jar, and they're able to put in a huge cup of pebbles. Even though you thought the jar was full with rocks, now they added pebbles to it. And then they're like, okay, now it's more full. Would you say that the jar is full? And you'd say, yeah, that jar is full. And then they take sand and they pour sand in there, and they can put a huge amount of sand in there because it fills into all the cracks and the nooks and crannies. And then again, they ask, does it look full? You say, yes, it looks really full now because you have sand in there. And then they take a big glass of water and they pour the glass of water inside that same jug. And then the jug fills up with water. And, um, and it shows that there's always, there's more space or perception. And what that example is showing isn't really what I'm going to use it for here, but I'm painting the picture so you guys understand what I'm talking about. So the reason why that example I feel like is important is because when you eat these things like corn or these foods that are bigger chunks, that's like the big gravel pieces. And then the smaller things would be like the quinoa or the flax seeds, or even like, uh, they're just things like that. Um, and then you get into the liquids, and on our diet right now, there's not a lot of just straight things that are liquid, but like soy milk, almond milk, those types of things. Those are going to go into your digestive system, and that's going to um, go through your system. And what touches the wall is what you absorb. When you eat oil, which is 4,000 calories per pound, that oil gets into your system. And just like that water from that experiment, that oil can go anywhere and it can fill in all these nooks and crannies. And so when you eat things that are high in calorie but are like a liquid or like that, your body absorbs all that oil. And a lot of times people don't calculate the cooking oil into their calorie uh calculations when they're looking at their food for the day. They look and they write down all the food they ate, but they don't really take in consideration that they used a tablespoon of oil to make this, or they used a little bit of oil to do that. Uh, but your body doesn't make that mistake. Your body sees that oil, and because it can flow between all of the food that you're eating and it can fit into all those nooks and crannies, that means that it will absolutely get to where it's touching the stomach lining of or the lining of your intestines, and your body will likely absorb all of the calories from oil that you take in. And the same I feel like is from like bacon grease or that type of stuff. That when I ate a McDonald's cheeseburger 2 years ago, my body might not have been able to get to all of that meat to process all of the nutrients from that meat, or maybe it didn't get into that cheese and get all that cheese broken down. But you can bet that it took all of that oil that was there, or all the fat, or all the liquid that was in that food, and it soaked it up and ate it up and stored it throughout my body as fat. And so again, it's just really more about the calorie absorption and realizing that the food you're eating has uh, properties that make it more absorbable or less absorbable by your body. And that, like I said, I think that we kind of ignore them as well. Like a lot of people that cook with oil, they don't calculate it as part of that equation, and you absolutely should. It should be the first thing you calculate, and the stuff that's harder to digest, then you you know, could maybe assume that your body absorbs fewer calories of that. And so I hope that made sense. I don't know if it was the best example to use to get that point across, but just watch what you're eating. The For me and my diet, the thing that I probably need to cut back even more than the cashews is the nut butters, because those nut butters kind of are that same way. They're very oily. If you let it sit in the on the shelf for too long, you get to see that. If you've ever bought a actual like nut butter, peanut butter, or an almond butter, a lot of times it's the oil separates from the actual nut. And yeah, it's funny as it'd be interesting to see if it would make a difference. We buy a nut butter, it's called Crazy Richard's nut butter, that I almost wonder if instead of mixing the oil in, if I just dumped that oil out, if it would affect the taste a whole lot, um, and if it would save me many calories overall. Carrie says for sure she was very guilty of not accounting for the oil in her food logs when she was doing food tracking. Yeah, I think that it's something that we take for granted. I think that also, salt doesn't have any calories, but I think that it does affect our body's ability to absorb foods, whether it makes it easier to absorb or less easy or causes issues. I don't think that salt is good for adding to our system. I mean, there's very few examples where salt outside of diet is beneficial for a lot of things, like you don't want salt to touch your car because you'll get rust on your car, or you don't yeah. So it's yeah. Anyways, I could go on about why I shouldn't eat salt for days, I feel like. And anyways, I really appreciate everybody checking out today's video. I'm going to get out of here today and go enjoy some of that sweet potato rosemary casserole that we're going to have for dinner tonight. I am looking forward to this next week because I feel like it's going to have to come down. The weight's going to have to move in the right direction. I am Again, no, but I mean, it's really only a 2-week problem. It's been 14 days. It's been like this. The last month, I've lost 7 pounds. Since the beginning of 2022, I'm down 22 pounds. So it it might not be going as fast as I want it to go, but overall, things are going in the right direction, and I can't be disappointed with that. So thanks for checking out the video. I'll be back on tomorrow. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, get subscribed to the channel. Click on that bell icon so you get alerted when I go live. And if you haven't started your diet yet, get started right now, guys. I want to have 100 people on here telling me how awesome it is that they started their diet and how they wish they would have started sooner, because that's what everybody says is when they get to their goals is that they wish they would have started sooner. And I'm not even to my goal yet, but I have the same opinion. I wish I would have started sooner. I could have dealt with this 14 days of not losing weight 6 months ago if I would have started 6 months sooner. And so get started right now. Don't fall for the myths of moderation, the myth of moderate change, the idea that you will be able to slowly switch over time. And some people say that it's possible for them or they have been able to do that. But in the long run, if your goal is to make the change completely, by doing it slowly, all you're doing is slowing down the process. And for many of us, it's not a process that needs to be slowed down. It's a process that needs to be sped up. And so don't fall for the myth of moderate change. Also, the myth of moderate consumption, the idea that a little bit of something is okay, you know, just have a little bit of that junk food and, it's only a little bit. It can't be that bad for you. Well, you do that times the speed of light and it adds up. And also, the idea that you can eat portion control, eating half a plate of food, you can do it for a little while. If you're taking drugs like phentermine or any another type of appetite suppressant, you might be able to do it even better. But in the long run, it is not sustainable. If it was, guys, you all would have succeeded already, because every single person that's still watching this video 35 minutes in has tried to do a diet where they moderate themselves, and they're constantly fighting. They're constantly having arguments with themselves about whether or not they can just binge this one time. I'll make up for it. I'll eat even less after I eat this big meal now. It's just a continual battle that you don't have to put yourself through if you change the calorie density of the food that you're eating. Thanks, guys, for checking out my video. I will see you tomorrow.